Hello everyone, this is Jag. In this video, I'll show you how you can do your own soil tests and your own soil analysis. You should never buy farmland before conducting this soil analysis. Now, USDA has conducted a lot of research and a lot of soil surveys all throughout the United States, and they have made all of this information available online for you to look at. So whenever you're looking for a property or you're looking for a farm and you want to know what kind of soil is involved with that property, you can check out these resources and find out a lot of information. Now, a lot of soil analysis companies and a lot of consultants will never tell you about these resources, but these resources are absolutely free and you can use these to your advantage. So let me show you what those resources are, and for that, let's go inside. Before we begin, let's cover different types of soil. This information comes in really handy whether you're a farmer or a home gardener. Basically, there are three different types of soil. There's sand, silt, and clay. Sandy soils are grittier in nature and they allow a lot of water drainage. However, sandy soils fail in retaining moisture and also nutrients. So you'll have to water more often and provide a lot more fertilizer to your plants in sandy soils. Silty soils are finer and smoother. They do hold more moisture than sandy soils, so you do have to manage water drainage. Clay soils are much heavier and have drainage problems. However, clay soils are very good at retaining moisture and nutrients, and clay soils are usually more nutrient rich than other soils. Both sandy and silt soils are easier to cultivate, while clay soils are a little bit harder to cultivate. However, if managed properly, clay soils hold a lot of water and a lot of nutrients and can do wonder for the plants. So let's look at the tools that USDA has, and they can tell you all the soil profiles in the areas that you're looking for. So let's begin. So here's a USDA website. Here's the web address. It's websoilsurvey.sc.egov.usda.gov. So when you visit this page, click on Start Web Soil Survey on the right side. Now this will open up the tool that you can use to look at different soil profiles and soil series. You can easily use this magnifying tool to select an area to zoom into, and then you can zoom into the area of interest. However, the quickest way I've found out is to actually type in the address. So you can actually type in the address for the property that you're interested in or your own property. Here's the address of a local park. So let me click on view and it loads up that address. And then you can select area of interest right here. This is what I had selected before. So let me select this much. So here's an area of interest that I've selected, and then click on soil map. And this will show you different types of soil series in this area of interest. Look at this. There are three different types of soil in this area that we just pulled up. There's a compost sandy loam, there's a Tokay fine sandy loam, and there's another sandy loam here as well. So you can see what kind of soil these are by clicking on the soil name itself. So when you pull this up, it shows you a lot of information. It shows you the grade of the soil, how slanting it is. It shows you the elevation. It shows you the mean precipitation, which is about 15 inches. It shows you the annual air temperature. It's the mean temperature, frost-free periods, and the soil classification as well, according to how fertile it is and if it's farmable. Is this prime farmland if irrigated? And it shows you what kind of soil components are in there. So it's a compost sandy loam soil 85%, and other components are 15%. So this shows you a lot of information about this soil series. You can click on another soil series, and then again it shows you all the detailed information on this soil series, and it also shows you all the soil, different types of soil, and what you're expecting underground as well, up to 5 feet. So here's our property, and you can see there are two main types of soil here: Redding soil series and San Joaquin silt loam soil series. So let's look at these, and you will see that the elevation, the annual precipitation, we get about 10 to 22 inches. Soil classification is farmland of statewide importance. The San Joaquin series is 85% of it, 15% is other components. But look at this. Check this out now. So up to 2 feet, we have silt loam. Then from 24 inches, 23 inches, 28 inches, we have clay loam. And then this is the hardpan. This is the hardpan under the soil as well. Let's look at the other soil series. And you can see there's gravelly loam, gravelly loam, gravelly loam, 19 to 22 inches clay, cemented gravelly material. This is the hardpan. This is the hardpan that we actually saw when we were actually looking at the property. So We did a lot of research about it and tried to find out our options, and we found a lot of good information.
So always know what kind of ground you're buying and what you're getting into. So even before we bought this property, we knew that there's a hard pan at about 2.5 to 3 feet under this property. And there are multiple ways hard pans are formed. They're naturally occurring hard pans that are formed due to natural geography and topography of the area. And hard pans are also formed by constant tractor activity. Tractors only cultivate about top 1 foot of the soil, and the soil underneath keeps getting compacted, which also forms hard pans. Those are called shallow hard pans. And there are multiple ways to get rid of hard pans. There are multiple ways to get rid of shallow hard pans. Deeper hard pans are a little bit harder to get rid of. However, if they're shallow hard pans, you can just plant different types of cover crops to loosen up the soil and break the hard pan. However, there are no cover crops that have roots strong enough and deep enough to penetrate 2.5 to 3 feet under the ground and break up deeper, more stronger hard pans. So that's why we had to rent a big D10 dozer to rip our ground, to soften our ground. Now the reason for deep ripping is to actually soften the ground, for the roots to grow deeper into the soil, and also for water to penetrate deeper into the soil as well. So before we deep rip, water would just stagnate over the ground. When it would rain, there would be pools of water on the ground, and water wouldn't actually grow deeper into the soil. And that was a big concern, really big concern, because if we didn't deep rip and we just planted trees like that, the roots of the trees would be sitting in water and the trees would have drowned. And also the roots of the trees would have struggled a lot to grow deeper into the soil as well. And let me show you one of the reasons why we deep rip and why the roots of the trees would struggle as well. I have proof right here.
Now check out the roots of this tree. They're right on the surface. You know why? Because the root of this tree is not able to break through the hard pan and grow deeper. So the root just keeps sprawling right on the surface. This tree is 30 years old and it was not able to break through the hard pan to grow deeper roots.
Now it's not just that tree. There are multiple trees on this property that are suffering from the same condition. Look at the roots of this tree. They're just sprawling over the ground, trying to find some softer ground. Now don't get me wrong, you don't actually have to deep rip. I don't have any interest in deep ripping or not in deep ripping. I'm just giving you advice from what I've learned and what's best for your farm. So if you're planting row crops or annual crops such as corn or wheat, you don't have to deep rip. If you're planting strawberries, you don't have to deep rip because you're only going to cultivate top 1 foot of the soil. So there's no reason for you to deep rip. However, if you're planting orchards, you're planting trees, nut trees or fruit trees, that's when you have to evaluate whether you should deep rip or not to deep rip. In our situation, we actually had to deep rip. Now, how did we reach that decision? Let me show you how. Now, making that decision includes a physical test to actually physically test your soil. And for that, I rented an auger like this one. At that time, I actually contacted a soil analysis company because I didn't know how to do this all by myself. So I had to contact a company and have one of the analysts sent out here. And we went around and punched 16 holes all around the property to collect soil samples. Now we dug our holes in 3 different depths. We dug a hole 1 foot deep, collected the samples. We dug another hole about 2 feet deep, collected a sample, and a 3 feet deep and collected that sample as well. Now it is very important to keep all the 1 foot samples together, the 2 foot samples together, and the 3 foot samples together. Don't mix those up because you want to know your soil analysis at each depth. And now you can do this yourself, and I can do this myself now because I've learned it. Just get an auger like this one. This is what I currently use. This is a Landworks auger. This is a 3 horsepower auger with a 52cc engine. The auger bit on this is 8 inches wide and it can drill holes up to 30 to 32 inches deep. You can use this auger to drill your holes 1 foot deep, collect your samples, and continue drilling deeper to collect more samples at deeper depths. So get an auger like this one, and then collect your own samples and send it to a lab and you can get the report. You'd actually have to pay a lot of money to a soil consultant to come out here and do it for you. So when we were digging holes, we actually physically hit the hard pan and we could not go through it, even with an auger. We tried real hard, but we couldn't go through it. So the hard pan was about 2.5 feet deep in 40% of the property and 2 feet 8 inches to 3 feet deep in the rest of the property. So USDA soil survey was pretty accurate and pretty reliable, and I can attest to that. Now, I'm not a proponent or advocate for deep ripping. That was one of the situations that was dealt to us, and that was the only solution that we could take to actually, mitigate that situation. Now, deep ripping does release carbon into the atmosphere, which is not environmentally friendly. However, sometimes you have to take a step back to take hundreds of steps forwards. And I didn't actually want to deep rip. It costed $13,000 to deep rip this land. However, I consulted with UC Davis Ag Department and had multiple phone calls with them, and they did recommend deep ripping. Another alternative to deep ripping is to actually build up your soil, which works really well on a smaller area, under 1 acre or so. You can actually build up your soil, and that works great. However, we are on 20 acres here and would have to build 2 feet over our current soil levels. That would have given our trees 4 to 4.5 feet for the roots of the trees to grow deeper into the soil. However, building soil on 20 acres in this scale is enormous. It would have costed $200,000 in topsoil and compost to build 2 feet over our current soil levels, which was not doable. Another thing you can do is buy a land that does not have hardpan. Maybe land that has been farmed before, been ripped before, or naturally doesn't have a hardpan. However, those lands sometimes cost much more than buying a piece of virgin ground and deep ripping and actually building it yourself. In our case, land is very expensive here in California, and buying land that was already been farmed before or had some sort of irrigation system was costing an arm and a leg. It was costing so much that we could not afford it. So it was better for us to buy this piece of property and pay $13,000 to deep rip the land. Another reason was that the land that's already been farmed before, they were actually using pesticides and weedicides on the land. So we would have to wait 3 years to get organic certification. Since this farm has never been farmed before, there were no pesticides or chemical fertilizer being used on this land. So we can get organic certifications right away. That was one of the main incentives that actually drove us to buying this land. And I get to document the entire process of building this land or turning this land into an actual farm, an organic self-sustaining farm. I don't know if you can see it, but there are horses that my neighbor has behind our property, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Now, hardpan is not the only thing that you should be looking for. There are multiple other things that you should be looking for in the land that you're buying, and your soil analysis report will tell you that. And the soil analysis report is very easy to do. Like I said, you can actually grab up all the samples. Just make sure you have about 2 to 3 pounds in a bag for each sample for them to have enough soil to give you good results. And they will tell you all the makeup of your soil. They'll tell you how much nitrogen, potassium, manganese, calcium, all that stuff that's in your soil. And depending on what you have and what you're lacking, you might need to add some things into the soil. And you want to know the pH level of your soil as well. So over here, we have 2 different types of soil. We have San Joaquin series and we have a Redding series. It's not very uncommon to have different types of soils on your property. So don't be scared or be startled about that. It's very common to have different types of soil on the same property. So our soil is clay gravelly loam. So it has clay, it also has some sandy loam in it and some gravel in it. However, the gravel in the soil is very, very small gravel. I was actually concerned that it's going to be big pieces of rocks, but it's not. And it actually helps with drainage. So it's good to have some gravel in your soil. And clay actually helps to retain moisture and also nutrients in the soil. However, clay is a much tougher ground than sandy loams. So sandy loams are very, very fine, very soft soils. However, the nutrients and water just flow through the soil. So, there's give and take between clay and sandy loam, as I mentioned before. This is one of the bigger pieces of gravel I could find, and this is the kind of gravel that's in this ground. Now, after you get your soil analysis report, you have to make sure you have enough nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in your soil. And if you're lacking these elements, you can easily add these into your soil as well. You can get organic compost or make your own organic compost to do that. I'll be making my own organic compost. However, I'll also be ordering a lot of home realistic organic compost as well, because we'll need a lot of organic compost to add organic matter into the soil. And there's not enough time in my lifetime to make enough organic soil to add to this ground, because we're gonna need a lot. So I'll be ordering truckloads of organic compost as well. Now, another thing you want to check is the last use of pesticides on your ground. You can easily contact your county and pull up a report of last use of pesticides. And the county will be able to tell you what pesticides and when they were used on the ground that you're actually interested in. Another thing you want to look for is the amount of salt in your soil and the amount of salt in the water they'll be using to water your ground as well. Those things are very, very important to know. Another thing you want to know is the pH level of your soil. What kind of pH is there? Is your soil alkaline or is your soil more acidic? The soil over here is about 5.5 to 6.0, so it's a little bit on the acidic side. If your soil is too acidic, you might need to add lime to make your soil more alkaline. If your soil is more on alkaline and you want to make it acidic, you have to add sulfur. So we'll be adding sulfur in the ground where we'll be growing blueberries, because blueberries love, you know, acidic soil. So we'll be adding sulfur to make the soil more acidic. And for the plants that actually like alkaline soil, we'll be adding lime. Another thing you want to add is gypsum. Gypsum makes the soil more permeable, and it actually helps with drainage of the soil as well. So we'll be adding gypsum to the soil as well. Another thing that I'm going to do is get a lot of wood chips, and I'm going to cover my rows with wood chips as well. Wood chips retain moisture and also add organic matter to the soil, and also helps to build microbial activity in the soil as well. I'll also be growing lots of cover crops in between my rows as well, and that's going to actually help with keeping the soil loose and also, you know, encourage microbial activity and also encourage beneficial insects as well. I'll be planting flowers to attract bees. So bees are going to help in pollination, and also flowers are going to attract ladybugs and lacewings, which are natural predators of the pests such as aphids. So that's going to help as well. Another thing I'm going to do is actually build a pond on this property, and I'm going to catch rainwater in the pond, and then I'm going to keep fish in the pond and build fish nitrates. Then I can use fish nitrate rich water to water my trees and my plants. Now this is the road that I'm taking to organic, self-sustaining gardening and farming. No matter what you do not use chemical fertilizers, weedicides and pesticides. That will just ruin your soil, and it will decrease the microbial activity in your soil, and will also kill beneficial insects. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're coming along on the beautiful journey that we have here to build this farm. And I'll see you in another video.